Oz the Great and Powerful is a 2013 American fantasy adventure film directed by Sam Raimi, produced by Joe Roth, and written by David Lindsay-Abaire and Mitchell Kapner. The film stars James Franco as the titular character, Mila Kunis as Theodora, Rachel Weisz as Evanora, and Michelle Williams as Glinda. Zach Braff, Bill Cobbs, Joey King, and Tony Cox are featured in supporting roles. The film is based on L. Frank Baum's Oz novels and is a prequel to the 1939 MGM film The Wizard of Oz, set 20 years before the events of the original novel. Oz the Great and Powerful focuses on the origin of the Wizard of Oz, whose real name is revealed to be Oscar Diggs, and who arrives in the land of Oz and encounters three witches, Theodora, Evanora, and Glinda. Oscar is then enlisted to restore order in Oz, while struggling to resolve conflicts with the witches and himself. Oz the Great and Powerful premiered at the El Capitan Theatre on February 14, 2013, and with general theatrical release by Walt Disney Pictures on March 8, 2013, through the Disney Digital 3D, RealD 3D and IMAX 3D formats, as well as in conventional theaters. Despite mixed reviews, the film was a box office success, grossing $493 million worldwide in revenue. $234 million of which was earned in the United States and Canada. Plot: in 1905 Kansas, Oscar Diggs works as a magician in a traveling circus. An inveterate womanizer, Oscar flirts with the circus strongman's wife, and the strongman threatens him. Oscar escapes in a hot air balloon, but is sucked into a tornado that takes him to the land of Oz. There he encounters the beautiful but naive witch Theodora. She believes him to be a wizard prophesied to destroy the wicked witch who killed the King of Oz en route to the Emerald City. Theodora falls in love with Oscar. They encounter the flying monkey Finley, who pledges a life debt to Oscar when he saves him from a lion. At the Emerald City, Oscar meets Theodora's sister Evanora, who tells him the wicked witch resides in the dark forest and can be killed by destroying her wand, the source of her powers. Oscar and Finley are joined en route to the forest by China Girl, a young, living China doll whose village and family were destroyed by the wicked witch. Oscar fixes the China Girl's broken legs with glue. They reach the forest and retrieve the wand, but they discover the wicked witch is Glinda the Good Witch, who identifies Evanora as the true wicked witch. Evanora sees this with her crystal ball and tricks Theodora into thinking he is trying to court all three witches. She offers Theodora a magic apple that she says will remove her heartache. Theodora bites it and turns into a green-skinned crone. Glinda brings Oscar's group to her domain in Oz to escape Evanora's army of Winkies and flying baboons. She confides to Oscar that she knows he is not a wizard, but still believes he can help stop Evanora. He reluctantly takes charge of an army of Quaidlings, Tinkers, and Munchkins. Theodora enters Glinda's domain and angrily reveals her new, hideous appearance to Oscar. She threatens to kill him and his allies with the Emerald City's well-prepared army. Oscar despairs of his chances. After telling China Girl about the exploits of his hero Thomas Edison, he conceives a plan that relies on trickery. Glinda and her subjects mount a fake attack on the Emerald City using an army of scarecrow puppets whose true nature is hidden by thick fog. The witches are tricked into sending their flying baboons through a poppy field that puts them to sleep. Two flying baboons capture Glinda, who is brought to the city square and chained. Oscar infiltrates the Emerald City with his allies, but appears to abandon them in a hot air balloon loaded with gold. Theodora destroys the balloon with a fireball. Oscar secretly reveals his engineered death to his friends. Using a hidden smoke machine and image projector, he presents a giant image of his face amid smoke and flame as his true form, and calls upon the stars themselves to intimidate the wicked witches. Evanora fearfully hides in her castle while Theodora flees on her broom after her attacks fail to hurt the invincible wizard. China Girl frees Glinda, who defeats Evanora, destroying the wicked witch's emerald necklace that hides her true, crone-like appearance. The banished Evanora is carried off by the two remaining flying baboons. Oscar, now ruler of Oz, uses his projector to sustain the belief he is a powerful wizard. He also presents gifts to his friends. Master Tinker, who helped build his machines, receives Oscar's camping tool. Nuck, the grumpy munchkin herald, receives a mask with a smiley face. The long-suffering Finley receives Oscar's friendship along with his top hat. And China Girl accepts her friends as her new family. Finally, Oscar takes Glinda behind the curtains of his projector, thanks her for making him a better person, and they kiss. Continuity: Oz the Great and Powerful is set in the year 1905, 20 years before the events of the original Wizard of Oz novel. The film features several artistic allusions and technical parallels to the books in the 1939 film. The film's opening sequence is presented in sepia. When Oscar is caught up in the tornado, the audio transitions from monaural to stereo and eventually surround sound. The film transitions to full color when Oscar arrives in Oz. Additionally, the aspect ratio gradually widens from 4:3 Academy ratio to 2.35 to 1 widescreen. As in the 1939 film, Glinda travels in giant bubbles, and the Emerald City is actually emerald. In the novel, characters wear tinted glasses to make it appear so. The iconic green look of the Wicked Witch of the West is closer to her look in the classic film, as the witch is a short, one-eyed crone in the novel. The Wicked Witches are portrayed as sisters, an idea which originated in the 1939 film. Several actors who play Oz characters make cameos in the Kansas segments, such as Frank, Oscar's assistant whom he refers to as his trained monkey, and a young girl in a wheelchair who serves as the Kansas counterpart to China Girl. Another character, Annie, informs Oscar that she has been proposed to by a John Gale, presumably hinting at Dorothy Gale's parental lineage. Other referenced characters include the Scarecrow, who is built by the townspeople as a scare tactic. Similarly, various other races of Oz are depicted besides the Munchkins. The Quadlings, the China doll inhabitants of dainty China country, and the Winkies. Similarly, Glinda is referred to by her title in the novel, unlike the 1939 film, where her character's title is Good Witch of the North. Theodora's tears leave streaks of scars on her face, reflecting her weakness to water in the original film. Also, Oz is presented as a real place as it is in the novel, and not a dream as the 1939 film presents. Cast: James Franco as Oscar Zoroaster Phaedrich Isaac Norman Henkel Emmanuel Ambroise Diggs, or Oz, a womanizing con artist, stage magician, and barnstormer who is part of a traveling circus in the Midwest. He is whisked in a hot air balloon by a tornado to the land of Oz, where he is believed to be a wizard destined to bring peace to the land, forcing him to overcome his dubious ethics to convince his peers he is the hero needed by the people of Oz. Mila Kunis as Theodora, a beautiful and Norvay good witch who has the land of Oz's best interests at her heart. She believes that Oscar is the wizard prophesied to defeat the seemingly evil Glinda from the Dark Forest, developing an attraction to him in the process. Evanora gradually manipulates Theodora into thinking Oscar has betrayed her for Glinda, ushering her transformation into the Wicked Witch of the West. Rachel Weisz as Evanora, the protector of the Emerald City and former advisor to the original King of Oz, whose murder she has committed prior to the events of the film, framing his daughter Glinda for the murder. Being a wicked witch, she has a hideous form which she hides by wearing a necklace that gives her the appearance of a stunning young woman. She deceives Oscar by framing Glinda for the king's murder and telling Oscar that Glinda is the wicked witch rather than herself. Michelle Williams as Glinda, the Good Witch of the South. She rules and protects a peaceful kingdom in Oz inhabited by kind Quadlings, Tinkers, and Munchkins. Oscar originally believed her to be the Wicked Witch responsible for terrorizing the land. She guides Oscar to achieve his destiny of defeating Evanora, becoming his love interest in the process. Michelle Williams also plays Annie, an old flame of Oscar's and future mother to Dorothy Gale. Zach Braff as the voice of Finley. Finley is a winged monkey who pledges an irrevocable life debt to Oscar, believing him to be the prophesied wizard, for saving him from the cowardly lion. He quickly regrets his decision when Oscar reveals he is not a wizard, but nonetheless becomes his loyal ally. Braff also plays Frank, Oscar's long-suffering yet loyal assistant in Kansas. Bill Cobbs is the Master Tinker, the leader of the Tinkers who are ruled by Glinda. He would later build the Tin Woodman. Joey King as the voice of China Girl, a young, living China doll from Chinatown where everything, including its inhabitants, is made of China. Her home is destroyed by Evanora, leaving her its only survivor when she is found by Oscar, with whom she forms a strong friendship after he used glue to fix her legs. King also plays a girl in a wheelchair visiting Oscar's magic show in Kansas. Tony Cox plays Nuck, the quick-tempered herald and fanfare player of Emerald City who is allied with Glinda. Stephen Hart and Bruce Campbell play Winky guards at the Emerald City. Abigail Spencer plays May, Oscar's temporary magic assistant in Kansas and one of his several fleeting loves in the film. Tim Holmes plays the strong man who attacks Oscar for trying to court his wife, prompting Oscar to take the hot air balloon that sends him to the land of Oz. Raimi, who often casts friends and actor regulars in cameo roles, cast his brother Ted Raimi as a small-town skeptic at a magic show who yells, "I see a wire." Two of his former teachers are Jim Moll and Jim Bird as Emerald City townspeople, and the three actresses from his directorial debut The Evil Dead Ellen Sandwell, Betsy Baker and Teresa Tillier as Quadling townspeople. Production: Disney's History with Oz. After the success of Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs in 1937, Walt Disney planned to produce an animated film based on the first of L. Frank Baum's Oz books. Roy O. Disney, chairman of the Walt Disney Studios, was informed by Baum's estate that they had sold the film rights to the first book to Samuel Goldwyn, who resold it to Louis B. Mayer in 1938. The project was developed by Metro-Goldwyn-Mayer into the well-known musical adaptation starring Judy Garland, Ray Bogger, Burt Lahr, Jack Haley, Margaret Hamilton and Billy Burke, released the following year. In 1954, when the film rights to Baum's remaining 13 Oz books were made available, Walt Disney Productions acquired them for use in Walt Disney's television series Disneyland and the live-action film Rainbow Road to Oz, which was abandoned and never completed. Disney's history with the Oz series continued with the 1985 film Return to Oz, which performed poorly, both critically and commercially, but has developed a cult following since its release. After Return to Oz, Disney lost the film rights to the Oz books and they were subsequently reverted to the public domain. In 2005, Disney made a musical television film, The Muppets Wizard of Oz, development. Screenwriter Mitchell Kapner was intrigued by the prospect of exploring the origins of the Wizard of Oz character after reading the sixth novel in the series The Emerald City of Oz. Producer Joe Roth became involved for nearly the same reason as Kapner, stating that, "During the years that I spent running Walt Disney Studios, I learned about how hard it was to find a fairy tale with a good strong male protagonist. You've got your Sleeping Beauties, your Cinderellas and your Alices. But a fairy tale with a male protagonist is very hard to come by. But with the origin story of the Wizard of Oz, here was a fairy tale story with a natural male protagonist. Which is why I knew that this was an idea for a movie that was genuinely worth pursuing." Kapner and co-writer Palak Patel presented the idea to Sony Pictures but were turned down. In 2009, the project was set up at Walt Disney Pictures when the studio commissioned Oz the Great and Powerful under the working title Brick during the tenure of then Walt Disney Studios chairman Dick Cook, who was succeeded by Rich Ross and later Alan Horn, a succession in management that a major studio release is rare to survive. David Lindsay-Abaire was later hired, replacing Patel, who was reassigned as executive producer. Pre-production, Roth initially sought out Robert Downey, Jr. for the titular role of the Wizard in April 2010. By summer of that year, Sam Raimi was hired to direct the film from a short list that reportedly included directors Sam Mendes and Adam Shankman. In January 2011, Raimi met with Downey, but did not secure his casting. With Downey's disinterest acknowledged, Johnny Depp was then approached due to his previous collaboration with the studio in the Pirates of the Caribbean franchise and Alice in Wonderland. Depp liked the role but declined involvement, citing his commitment to another Disney tentpole film, The Lone Ranger. The film was without a lead until February when James Franco entered final negotiations to star in the film, 5 months before filming was scheduled to begin. Franco and Raimi has previously worked together on the Spider-Man trilogy. Franco received training with magician Lance Burton to prepare for the role. Screenwriter Mitchell Kapner adopted information about the wizard from L. Frank Baum's novels to conceptualize an original story. Raimi made sure that the film would also nod lovingly to the 1939 film and inserted several references and homages to that film. Disney wanted to reduce the film's production budget to be approximately $200 million. In June 2011, composer Danny Elfman was chosen to score as the Great and Powerful, despite Elfman and Raimi having had a falling out over Spider-Man 2 and Elfman declaring that they would never again work together. Casting calls were put out for local actors in Michigan. Filming, principal photography for Oz the Great and Powerful began July 25, 2011, at Raleigh Michigan Studios in Pontiac, Michigan, employing 3D cameras. Raimi opted to use practical sets in conjunction with computer-generated imagery during filming. Physical sets were constructed so the actors could have a visual reference, as opposed to using green screen technology for every scene. Chroma key compositing was only used for background pieces. Zach Braff and Joey King were on set, recording their dialogue simultaneously with the other actors, whenever their CG characters were present in a scene. Puppetry was employed for a physical version of the China Girl to serve as a visual key point for actors to manipulate. Braff wore a blue motion capture suit to create Finley's movements and had a camera close to his face for the flying sequences to obtain facial movements. Art director Robert Stromberg, who worked on Avatar and Alice in Wonderland, drew inspiration from the films of Frank Capra and James Wong how to achieve the Art Deco design he envisioned for the Emerald City. Stromberg contrasted the colorful tonal qualities of Oz with the restrained appearance of Alice, affirming that although both films explore similar fantasy worlds, the overall atmosphere and landscape of each are completely different. In 2011, Stromberg and his team visited the Walt Disney Archives during the pre-production phase to reference production art from Disney's animated films such as Pinocchio, Bambi, Fantasia, Cinderella, Sleeping Beauty, Alice in Wonderland, and Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs, drawing from designs and textures, in order to give certain settings in the film an affectionate nod to the classic Disney style. Costume designer Gary Jones focused on authenticity with his wardrobe designs. We started by doing a lot of research and having ideas of the ways should look in order to be, but as we went on, we really began creating a whole new world. The production team worked under the constraint of abiding by the stipulations set forth by Warner Brothers, the legal owner of the rights to iconic elements of the 1939 MGM film, including the ruby slippers worn by Judy Garland. Therefore, Disney was unable to use them nor any character likenesses from that particular film. This extended to the green of the Wicked Witch's skin, for which Disney used what its legal department considered a sufficiently different shade dubbed Theostine. Additionally, the studio could not use the signature chin mole of Margaret Hamilton's portrayal of the Wicked Witch of the West, nor could they employ the yellow brick road swirl design for Munchkinland. In addition to the legal issues, the film was also faced with delays when several cast members went on hiatus due to unrelated commitments and circumstances. Rachel Weisz left halfway through the shoot to film her entire role in The Bourne Legacy. Michelle Williams was required to promote the release of My Week with Marilyn, and Franco's father died during production. Roth compared the task of managing overlapping schedules to being an air traffic controller. Mila Kunis's makeup and prosthetics demanded 4 hours to apply and another hour to remove, with Kunis taking nearly 2 months to fully recover from the subsequent removal of the makeup from her skin. Post-production, Raimi had to edit the frightening nature of several scenes to secure Disney's desired PG rating from the MPAA. Sony Pictures Imageworks was contracted to create the film's visual effects. Music. Composer Danny Elfman noted that the film's score was excessively quick to produce, with a majority of the music being written in 6 weeks. Regarding the tonal quality of the score, Elfman stated, "We're going to take an approach that's old school but not self-consciously old-fashioned. Let the melodrama be melodrama, let everything be what it is. I also think there's the advantage that I'm able to write narratively, and when I'm able to write narratively I can also move quicker because that's my natural instincts. I can tell a story in the music." American singer-songwriter Mariah Carey recorded a promotional pop single called Almost Home written by Carey, Simone Porter, Justin Gray, Lindsay Ray, Tor Erik Hermansen, and Mikkel Eriksson for the soundtrack of the film. The single was released on February 19, 2013 by Island Records. Soundtrack. The original soundtrack to Was the Great and Powerful was released digitally and physically by Walt Disney Records on March 5, 2013. The physical CD release was in association with Intrada Records. All music composed by Danny Elfman. Release. In May 2011, before filming began, Walt Disney Studios Motion Pictures gave Was the Great and Powerful a March 8, 2013 North American theatrical release date. The film had its world premiere at the El Capitan Theatre in Hollywood on February 14, 2013. Disney opened the film in wide release in 3,912 theaters. Marketing. To promote the film, Disney partnered with the IMAX Corporation and HSN to coordinate a hot air balloon campaign across the United States beginning in California at the Walt Disney Studios lot in Burbank, stopping at 4 locations. The El Capitan Theatre during the world premiere, the Disneyland Resort in Anaheim, the Daytona International Speedway in Florida and Central Park in New York City. Disney also promoted the film through its theme parks. Epcot's International Flower and Garden Festival featured a multi-purpose garden and play area themed to the film, and Disney California Adventure hosted sample viewings inside the Muppet Vision 3D Theater. Home media. Was the Great and Powerful was released by Walt Disney Studios Home Entertainment on Blu-ray, Blu-ray 3D, DVD and digital download on June 11, 2013. The film is Disney's first home media release to exclude a physical digital copy disc and instead provides only a digital code for the download. Was the Great and Powerful debuted at number 1 in its first week of home media release in overall disc sales, with 46% of its first week sales from Blu-ray disc. The film has earned $46 million in sales. Reception. Critical response. Was the Great and Powerful received mixed reviews from film critics. The film holds a 59% approval rating on aggregate review site Rotten Tomatoes with an average score of 6/10, based on 242 reviews. The site's consensus says it suffers from some tonal inconsistency and a deflated sense of wonder, but Was the Great and Powerful still packs enough visual dazzle and clever wit to be entertaining in its own right. The film holds a score of 44 out of 100 on Metacritic based on 42 reviews, indicating mixed to average reviews. Kim Newman, writing for Empire, gave the film 4 out of 5 stars and said, "If there are post-Harry Potter children who don't know or care about The Wizard of Oz, they might be at sea with this story about a not very nice grown-up in a magic land, but long-term Oz watchers will be enchanted and enthralled." Mila Kunis gets a gold star for excellence in Bewitchery, and Sam Raimi can settle securely behind the curtain as a mature master of illusion. Critic Alonzo Duralde also admired the movie, that Was the Great and Powerful is so thoroughly effective both on its own terms and as a prequel to one of the most beloved movies ever made, indicates that this team has magic to match any witch or wizard. Leonard Maltin on IndieWire claimed that no movie ever can, or will, replace 1939 unregistered trademark as The Wizard of Oz, but taken on its own terms. This sci-fi fantasy is an entertaining riff on how the wizard of that immortal film found his way to Oz. IGN rated the film 7.8 and said, "The film is expansive and larger than life in scope, and so are the performances, overall." Franco in particular hams it up and is often playing to the balcony. The 3D is utilized just as it should be in a children's fantasy epic such as this, overtly, but with skill. Snowflakes, music boxes and mysterious animals all leap through the screen towards the audience as the story unfolds. Justin Chang of Variety had a mixed reaction, writing that the film gets some mileage out of its game performances, luscious production design and the unfettered enthusiasm director Sam Raimi brings to a thin, simplistic origin story. He also compared the film's scale with the Star Wars prequel trilogy, adding, "In a real sense, Was the Great and Powerful has a certain kinship with George Lucas' Star Wars prequels, in the way it presents a beautiful but borderline sterile digital update of a world that was richer, purer and a lot more fun in lower tech form." Here too, the actors often look artificially superimposed against their CG backdrops, though the intensity of the fakery generates its own visual fascination. Film rated the film 7 out of 10, saying it had many charms while considering it to be basically Army of Darkness, but just when you see Raimi's kinetic, signature style starting to unleash, the story forces the film back into its Disney shell to play to the masses. We're left with a film that's entertaining, a little scarier than you'd expect, but extremely inconsistent. Richard Roeper, writing for Roger Ebert, noted the film's omnipresent visual effects but was largely disappointed by the performance of some cast members. To see Williams so bland and sugary as Glinda, and Kunis so flat and ineffectual as the heartsick Theodora. Marshall Fine of the Huffington Post was unimpressed, writing, "Oh, it's exciting enough for a 6-year-old. Anyone older, however, will already have been exposed to so much on TV, at the movies and on the internet that this will seem like so much visual cotton candy. Even a sophisticated grade schooler will find these doings weak and overblown." Similarly, Todd McCarthy criticized the characterization, writing that the film's supporting cast can't begin to compare with their equivalents in the original. So the burden rests entirely upon Franco and Williams, whose dialogue exchanges are repetitive and feel tentative. Entertainment Weekly agreed, giving the film a C+ and saying that the miscast Franco lacks the humor, charm, and gee whiz wonder we're meant to feel as he trades wisecracks with a flying monkey and soars above a field of poppies in a giant soap bubble. If he's not enchanted, how are we supposed to be? And complaining that while Raimi's Oz is like retinal crack, he never seduces our hearts and minds. Elisha Carolho of IN.com gave the movie 2.5 stars, saying Oz the Great and Powerful doesn't leave a lasting impression, but is an AOC watch. Box office, Oz the Great and Powerful earned $234,911,825 in the United States and Canada, and $258,400,000 in other countries for a worldwide total of $493,311,825. Worldwide, it is the 13th highest-grossing 2013 film. It topped the box office on its worldwide opening weekend with $149.0 million. Before its theatrical release, several media outlets reported that Oz the Great and Powerful was expected to duplicate the box office performance of 2010's Alice in Wonderland. However, Oz accumulated less than half of Alice's worldwide gross. Oz is the 92nd highest-grossing film in North America. Preliminary reports had the film tracking for an $80 a $100 million debut in North America. The movie earned $2 million from 9 p.m. showings on Thursday night. For its opening day, Oz the Great and Powerful grossed $24.1 million, the fourth highest March opening day. During its opening weekend, the movie topped the box office with $79.1 million, the third highest March opening weekend. Despite the film's solid debut, which was larger than nearly all comparable titles, it clearly lagged behind Alice in Wonderland's opening. The film's 3D share of the opening weekend was 53%. Females made up 52% of the audience. Surprisingly, though, families only represented 41% of attendance, while couples accounted for 43%. The film retained first place at the box office during its second weekend with $41.3 million. Outside North America, the film earned $69.9 million on its opening weekend from 46 territories. Among all markets, its highest-grossing debuts were achieved in Russia and the CIS, China and France and the Maghreb region. The film's openings trailed Alice in Wonderland in all major markets except Russia and the CIS. It retained first place at the box office outside North America for a second weekend. In total grosses, Oz's largest countries are Russia and the CIS, China and the UK, Ireland and Malta. Accolades, sequel. On March 7, 2013, Variety confirmed that Disney has already approved plans for a sequel film, with Mitchell Kapner returning as screenwriter. Mila Kunis said during an interview with E! News, "We're all signed on for sequels." On March 8, 2013, Sam Raimi told Bleeding Cool that he has no plans to direct the sequel, saying, I did leave some loose ends for another director if they want to make the picture, and that I was attracted to this story, but I don't think the second one would have the thing I would need to get me interested. Kapner and Roth have said that the sequel will absolutely not involve Dorothy, with Kapner pointing out that there are 20 years between the events of the first film and Dorothy's arrival, and a lot can happen in that time. See also, adaptations of The Wizard of Oz, references. External links. Official website, Oz the Great and Powerful at the Internet Movie Database, Oz the Great and Powerful at AllMovie, Oz the Great and Powerful at Rotten Tomatoes, Oz the Great and Powerful at Box Office Mojo, production blog.